So without taking a lot of time, I'm going to welcome Mr. Abubakar Zain to share with us some of the gains that you have been able to achieve since he promulgated this constitution. And if there are any challenges, he can be able to share with us, and some of the recommendations we are going to hear from him on how we can implement the constitution in a proper manner and make the most of it. So over to you, Mr. Abubakar Zain.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. I would like first to appreciate the organizers and thanking them for inviting us to this conversation this morning. 11 years after the promulgation of our Constitution. First and foremost, I would like to say that it is important during this time in reflecting our struggles of getting a new constitution and implement that. First of all, it's important to say that the struggle was long. People paid with a high price for getting this constitution. So when we are reflecting this, we should also remember those who struggled to bring justice to our country. And we have done the same by entrenching this principle of appreciation of those who struggle to bring justice to our nation in our constitution in the preamble. This constitution that we have, many have commented and said that is a transformative constitution. And what do we mean by a transformative constitution? Some people have analyzed and said that any constitution that seeks to establish a just society and depart from an oppressive past can be termed to be a transformative constitution. So I would like to share with you some thoughts on our journey in the constitution making and constitution building process by saying that first we must separate the process and the content. And it is important to separate them in order to affirm some of the things that has informed the making of this constitution. So on the process, we had one of the most participatory processes in the world in getting this constitution. And that was partly informed by our past, which was characterized by injustice, oppression, exclusion, and in order to depart from that past, we negotiated a constitution-making process through a law that allowed us to establish a very participatory process beginning from the lowest levels of engagement in our nation. So we had presence at the ward level and then going all the way to the national level. And the process included carrying out of civic education so that people understood what the process was about, but also civic education that indicated what a constitution is, how it's supposed to function in a society, and what people can do in terms of contributing views in making their own constitution. And that was done fairly effectively. And that process had three important elements. One, apart from, could you mute your, yes, thank you. So the three elements were, one, apart from just impacting information about participation, we were hoping that by carrying out such intense civic education, and after the collection of views and collation of views and developing a draft constitution, that constitution will come back, the draft constitution will come back to the people for validation. So we were hoping that by people participating in this process, they will also know what they are getting themselves into, and that hopefully then it will lead to the respect of that constitution, meaning we were also investing in constitutionalism. Secondly, by having that extensive consultation of the people, we were hoping that they will own the process and also own the outcome. But thirdly, that it will contribute to their understanding of what that constitution requires of them in its implementation. Now, quickly, let me then go to the content. And the content was negotiated deliberately through that process. And of course, people remember that we went to a referendum in 2005 that the Kenyans rejected because they felt that the executive undermined their will by changing fundamentally some of the principles that were in what was called the Bomas draft, meaning the draft that was adopted by the people in the National Constitutional Conference. And it is important to indicate there's a lot of interference, Bonachapa. I don't know if you could mute.
Okay. The host can.
Please, host, mute your Galaxy. Can you mute?
Thank you. I was just saying that it was rejected, and then we appointed a committee of experts that started new consultations, and we adopted this constitution. So let me talk about some of the elements that are relevant to our subject matter today. You recall that the former constitution had provisions that did not give the same rights to all the people, and as individuals, as families, as communities, and as a nation. And that in the framing of this constitution, we felt it was important to establish the principle of equality, of course, with nuances. But this principle of equality required us to address the discrimination and exclusion of the past to various categories of the people. And I think one of the most, there's some important principles that we established that have the foundation of this constitution. So Article 1 of our constitution that establishes the principle of sovereignty of the people, all the people. Article 2 of our constitution that establishes the supremacy of the constitution. And then Article 3 of our constitution that establishes an obligation for us to protect this and promote and respect this constitution. But it is also important to indicate that this transformative nature of this constitution was such that it faced resistance. And that's why the first attempt to have a referendum was rejected by the people, because the people understood what they wanted themselves. Therefore, when we adopted this constitution, we faced a number of challenges. The first one was the expectations the people had about this constitution. Many of the people, because we raised their expectations so high in the constitution making process, many of them believed that that constitution would be a panacea for all their problems. It will fix all their problems very quickly. And of course, constitutions are not designed to be implemented in that fashion, where instantly it resolves all the problems. The second problem we had was that many Kenyans felt that this constitution is self-executing. That in other words, once they have done their duty to adopt this constitution, then it will implement itself. And it is good to contextualize this principle because we were, in our constitutional framework, we had provided for a commission to lead in the implementation of the constitution. And we had given it 5 years with the possibility of extension depending on the decision made by the National Assembly. Unfortunately, after that first 5 years, the National Assembly did not implement this, did not extend the life of the Constitution Implementation Commission. Then the third challenge we had was that we had people who had benefited from the previous system, the oppressive system that we were trying to completely dismantle. There was a large section of very influential elite who benefited from the previous system and of course resisted the implementation of this constitution. Now, if you take into account all the three together, then you will see what kind of challenge this constitution faced from its inception. It's also important to point out there is a distinction and the difference between constitution making and constitutional building. So once we made the constitution, our next challenge was how to build and implement this constitution. And that in itself required addressing the issues of mindset so that people, those who come from the last system that was governed under the former constitution, needed to embrace the values and the vision and the letter and the spirit of this new constitution. And there we had many challenges, particularly for people who got into leadership positions. And now specifically to talk about the equality, we had a previous system that oppressed a large section of our society, was based on discrimination, because if you consider from the colonial imperative, which was based on injustice and discrimination, uplifting the lives of a select few and oppressing the majority of the people, and then go into independence with a new constitution that was circumvented, then you have a single party dictatorship. So cumulatively, you had an infrastructure of oppression that needed to be dismantled. So the first thing this constitution did was to establish the principle that it is the people who are sovereign, not the president, not the executive in its collective form, or the legislature or the judiciary, but it's the people. But we also drew a distinction, unlike in the past constitution that was based on individual rights. We said, yes, we will have individual rights. And if you look at the preamble, it talks about the individual, the family, the community, and the nation. So collectively, we will look at rights in its wider context. And if you then start talking about addressing the issues of discrimination and establishing the principle of equality, then you go to Article 27 of our Constitution. And that Article 27 is important because it says equality and freedom from discrimination. And it establishes the principle of equality before the law. It also indicates in clear terms that all persons will enjoy the full and equal enjoyment of all rights and freedom, fundamental freedoms. And then in clause 3, it talks about women and men have the right to equal treatment, including the right to equal opportunities in political, economic, cultural, and social spheres. This is important because we didn't have such principle setting provisions in the previous constitution. And then in clause 4, we go ahead to outlaw this discrimination and say that the state shall not discriminate directly or indirectly against any person. and we go further and talk about many things, but I would like to point out clause 6, which indicates that to give full effect to the realization of the rights guaranteed under this article, the state shall take legislative and other measures, including affirmative action programs and policies designed to redress any disadvantage suffered by individuals or groups before the past discrimination. This is an important formulation because it establishes a certain principle and vision for our nation into the future. First, it accepts that there was past discrimination. Secondly, then it says that the state shall take legislative and other measures. And there are very few legislative efforts in the last 10 years that have taken this principle into account. And when it talks about other measures, it says including affirmative action programs. So we don't have any affirmative action programs taken by states and policies designed to redress the disadvantage suffered by individuals and groups in the past. And if you look at clause 8, it goes further and say, in addition to the measures contemplated in clause 6, the state shall take legislative and other measures to implement the principle that not more than 2/3 of the members of elective and appointive bodies shall be of the same gender. This is a crux of the matter, that the Constitution is explicit and implicit in establishing the principles of equality, but its implementation is where the challenge is. So I would like to just make one more comment. I think it will be useful for all of us to have a good conversation if some can mute who are talking in the background.
Bwana Mohammed, please mute. Bwana Mohammed, please mute. And the host, please mute Bwana Mohammed, please.
So let me finish this part by saying that one of the other most important principle in our Constitution is the article that follows Article 27, which is human dignity. Every person has an inherent dignity and the right to have that dignity respected and protected. And let me close by saying we've had a serious challenge in terms of the implementation of these principles of equality and providing the necessary resources, both human and financial, to ensure that what we have set ourselves in the Constitution is what is obeyed, respected, and implemented. I would like to take a pause at this point to allow others to make their contributions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abubakar, for that insightful presentation and the journeys which our Constitution has gone through and the opportunities which are there. As they say, this is a Constitution of the people, by the people, and for the people. So probably when you come to the second round of questions, you can give us recommendations on how we can achieve fully these rights, the rights to equality, the issues to do with affirmative action programs, especially how can women benefit out of that. So thank you very much, Mr. Abubakar. If you have any question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. And then after the presenters have made the presentations, we're going to have a round of questions and answer session. So right now, I would like to invite Madam Amina Sood, who is the manager of electoral operations at IEBC, to share with us what are some of the women opportunities in elective posts, the growth that you have seen since we promulgated the Constitution, and available opportunities for women and all Kenyans at large. So welcome very much, Madam Amina Sood. Karibu.
Asante sana na nimefurahi sana kuwa memba wa huu mkutano wa leo. na nafurahia pia kuona kwa kamishna wangu Zain Abubakar Zain bado yuko ngangari. Shukran sana bwana Zain. Na mnafikiri mwanisikia nyote?
Ndio madam, tunakupata vizuri.
Manake muhimu tujuane kama tutasikiana. Kwa upande wa IBC, mwanzo ni sawa nikitumia lugha zote mbili, sawa?
Sawa kabisa madam.
Ni sawa madam Amina.
Manake ni muhimu tuelewane mwanzo. Sawa, nilikuwa nataka kusema kwa ufupi, IBC imejaribu sana kama bwana Zain alivyozungumza kuwa implementation of the affirmative action ndio imekuwa ngumu sana in the whole, nafikiri all the ministries imekuwa ngumu sana, lakini as IBC we are trying, and if I say around the electoral cycle, from the pre-electoral cycle, from the pre-phase, we have the phase where we are now in, where we bring forth our aspirations to occupy space, aspire, testing the waters, build support teams, build resilience, political thick skin, mobilize for voters to register in areas of interest, mobilize for resources, finances, all that. This is when we do it. We also plan for the general election because we are only 1 year to the election. But with that in mind, we still have taken a step further to see how far we have gone with women in elections, how they participate. And if I give an overview, from 2013, we had only about 4.5 to 5% participation, which is in presidential, we had none. And then in governor, we had only 17 people, or 17 women. Senator, only 5 tried. Women rep, of course, they'll all be women. There were around 303. MCA, there were very few, about 70. And then MNA, we had 129. Out of these, only 16 women in MNA managed to be elected, and 69 MCAs managed to be elected. And 47, of course, the women were women reps, which is about 4.5%. But in 2017, we realized that it increased. I think with the support of different groups, different women groups, different FBOs who are pushing for the SIGs, the special interest groups, to participate in election, and they increased. The governorship, we had 3 of them elected out of the 9 who participated. And in the senator, out of the 20 who participated, we got 3 at least that time. And then in the MCA, we got 96 out of the 900 who participated. And MNA, we had 23 this time from 16, and 131 who participated. So we are, which is had an overall of 9% now. So we are seeing that women are now like they've woken up. Let's say they have woken up and they have gotten support from other areas. But that said, if we think of the legal framework, when Abubakar is here to affirm me, from Articles 35, there's a section to access to information, because women have always complained that they don't get enough information. Access to information is very rare, which I think it is not true in some part, because we have it the same way that the other groups have. But for us, to access to campaign resources is a problem, I will say. Election gender-based violence is a problem. Restrictive cultural practices, information gaps, which I think I've already talked about it, is not a very big thing, but it is in some areas. If I can say, Lamu also now, we are up in the game. We are going to schools, we are taking our girls to school, but in most areas, it is a problem. Capacity gaps in developing better relationships and networks, women not seen as representatives of the larger population, wrong attitudes that women capacities and capabilities are not sufficient. The attitude of women participation being taken as not in my backyard by persons in decision making. That's a big problem for us. But these articles that are supporting us, women, there's freedom of association, assembly, demonstration, picketing, and petition. 38, political rights for all citizens. And then to form or participate in forming a political party. Participate in activities or recruit members for a political party. Campaign for a political party. Right to free and fair regular elections based on universal suffrage. That is 38, clause 2. And then we have also in Article 81, where there's the truth agenda, which has been spoken by Abubakar. It has been a big thorn on all of us. And then this provision has been attained in the county assemblies by way of gender top-up through the party list model. But in the National Assembly, it has been a big issue. And then the enforcement of election offenses and the code of conduct to avert election gender-based violence. The Commission has noted an increase in incidences of insecurity during electioneering period, more so directed at harassing women candidates. And in this, we have formed a committee to work on that. Nomination fees have been halved in all the 6 positions. In presidential, we would say from 200 to 100. In the county governor, from 50 to 25. And in all the others, senator from 50 to 25, and the National Assembly from 20 to 10, and from the county assembly from 5 to 2,500, which is trying to support the gender inclusion. And then in our policy for frameworks, we have tried to do IBC gender and social inclusion policy, and then partnerships and stakeholder engagement policy to enforce where women rights organizations are key. IBC is currently putting in place an administrative mechanism to ensure that the truth agenda principle is realized. Creation of special interest groups, digest where engagement initiatives with SIGs at all levels will be reported. IBC also commits to ensure that political party nomination lists for elected positions in the Senate and National Assembly comply with the truth agenda rule before they are accepted by the Commission for candidates registration nomination. Another is the rejection of nomination lists that are not compliant with truth agenda rule. We reject them. And then nomination fees, as I said, we have made them half. Continuous engagement with PPLC to ensure compliance, and then continuous touchdowns with investigation and prosecution institution on stemming incidences of electoral and related violence evidence by the steps the Commission took in recent by-elections that were seen. Continuous engagement with security agencies to identify and inform on hotspots. We have a program called Electoral Security Administrative Program, where we identify hotspots for all the participants, but especially for the SIGs, because they are the most vulnerable. And then we have the Electoral Code of Conduct that comes into force during the campaign period. Code of Conduct Enforcement Committee to strengthen, penalize candidates and political parties that perpetuate electoral malpractices, violence, intimidation, discrimination, and destruction of campaign materials. Regularization of engagement meetings with women rights organizations, such as this one. Establishment of women's situation rooms to monitor and report on gender-based breaches during nomination campaigns and elections. Our commitment, I'm trying to be fast because I know when you talk too much, it becomes boring, but I hope we are all following up. Our commitment and guarantees as IBC, we are committing to accrediting women-led CBOs as voter education providers, election observers, preferential treatment of expectant mothers and those with small babies to vote first at the polling station, targeted voter education in support of women candidates through production of gender-sensitive IC materials and media placement of messages at appropriate times for access by women, use of women voice overs and influencers in social media, gender-sensitive budgets where funds are set aside for advocacy forums for inclusive participation of SIGs in all electoral processes. That's what we have in plan for all the SIGs, but in particular for women. And so far, we have accredited a few. We have accredited a few CBOs which are specifically working for youth and women. Thank you, and I welcome any question or comment or concern on that. Karibuni.
Thank you very much, Madam Amina, for that presentation. It was very insightful. Na pia tungependa kushukuru as Muslim Women Advancement of Rights and Protection for taking your time to share that with us. Na pia tunashukuru for getting accreditation to be observers in the next cycle of elections.
Even voter education provider, if you apply, we will give you, don't worry.
Asante sana, madam. Tunashukuru kwa hilo. So thank you very much, and I hope you are learning something to the others who are on this call. And if you have any question, please note it down. And then after all the presenters have spoken, we are going to have a round of questions and answers. So sasa ningependa kuchukua fursa hii kumkaribisha Mheshimiwa Amina Kale, ambaye ni member of County Assembly Lamu, who has been nominated tangu 2013. Alikuwa nominated MCA for 5 years, na 2017 pia akapata nomination nyingine for another 5 years. So tungependa kusikia kutoka kwa Mheshimiwa Amina Kale, atuambie yeye kama kiongozi wa kina mama, hii katiba mpya ambayo sasa imefikisha miaka 11 imeweza kuwapatia nafasi gani kama kina mama wanasiasa, kama kuna changamoto zozote ambazo kina mama wanapitia wanasiasa katika katiba hii, na pia tupatie mawaidha yake ama recommendations ni vipi tutakabiliana nazo. So karibu sana Mheshimiwa.
Asante sana na asalamu alaikum kwa wote mnaonisikiliza. Nimefurahi kuwa katika baraza hii leo. Naam, mimi ni nominated MCA katika bunge la kaunti ya Lamu na nimekuwa nominated mara 2, kwa hivyo ni mmoja katika waliofaidika na katiba mpya. Kusema kweli, kama walivyozungumza wenzangu, ni kwamba katiba imetupatia nafasi wanawake, ile 2/3 gender rule, tuingie katika siasa, tuingie katika serikali, tuingie katika biashara na kadhalika. Lakini utaona ni kwenye county assembly peke yake ambao tumeweza kutekeleza ile 3rd gender, ambapo ni kwa sababu ya nominations. Lakini National Assembly bado haijaweza kufikia hapo. Na katika county assemblies ni nominations peke yake, elections bado ziko chini sana. Utaona katika county assembly ya Lamu mwanamke ambaye amekuwa elected ni mmoja katika wanaume, ama katika ward 10 zilizoko Lamu county assembly, Lamu county government ni mmoja peke yake. Sababu ni nini? Some of the reasons ambazo zafanya watu wetu ama wanawake wetu wasichaguliwe katika nafasi hizi ni kwamba there's that chauvinism, ubabe, there's that culture that our people think that no, leaders should only be men. We cannot be led by women. Also, there's another thing of financial status. Our campaigns are very expensive. And the financial status of our women, the small percentage of women can afford the campaign budget. Another problem that face our people is the education. We also have the women that are educated. The number is very small in comparison with men. So that also hinders women to go out and vie for these seats. And there are some women who have actually tried, but because of the cultural strains, that has made so many of us to shy off. Another thing that is not bringing up women, apart from the seats of the electoral seats, as I said, we have the leadership seats and the employment in offices. So we also have a business like tendering. In our constitution, it accepts that 1/3 of the tenders should be given to special groups. And that is happening, but we don't know if our women or our youth or our special people are actually gaining out of that. But when they advertise, there is that portion of the special groups to apply. So we are just hoping that there is that a third one. And also the employment of women in offices. We are also thinking that we have not reached there. We're still fighting for a third of the women to be employed in offices. And as a county assembly member, that is one of my job is oversight. But I've seen when it comes to politics, there is a lot that hinders us as politicians to do our work because of the politicking that is. But if only maybe the Ministry of Gender could be given that work of oversight, whereby they make sure that all employments, all tenders that are given out, that only women or youth or disabled are given their third part, at least for now, because we can also be the 2/3. But at least for now, we should reach that third part. But that one has not been achieved yet. And the reasons are, as I said, we still have those cultural thinking that the women or the youth or the disabled cannot govern well, cannot work well, cannot do this work well. So only men have a better chance than the women and the youth and the disabled. So how can we solve that problem? One, we have to set aside policies and procedures, like what Madam Amina said in IBC. They are setting aside that parties come up with it was there in the BBI, unfortunately it has not gone through, but parties were asked to make sure that they have nomination, they nominate women in their lists. They nominate women in their lists. That is one way of helping the 2/3 gender rule to go through. Another way is to make sure that the women who are ready to vie for these chances, for the employment chances, are financially supported. Because as I said, the campaign in Kenya is very expensive. So unless they are financially supported, it's the only way that we can get these chances, we can win. Another method is using role models. There was a time before the 2013 elections, we as Kikozi Program Group, we have a group whereby I am a director. We got funds from donors, whereby we identified role models, women leaders who have succeeded in life. They have succeeded in their jobs. We took them through Lamu County government and we gave them platforms to explain and exercise, show people that their powers, what they can do, what they have done, or rather their achievements, so that we change that stereotype of saying only men can lead, only men can do, women cannot. We see, so we have to do a lot of that, so that awareness, do a lot of sensitization and awareness to our people, so that people change that mindset of chauvinism, actually. We also have to work very hard, although we have done a lot, but we still have to work hard on the education status of our girls. We have boys who also have a dilemma, who are also in problems in terms of drugs and all that, but our girls are still not educated enough. The number is still very small. So we have to have groups, we have to have funds to improve the education levels of our girls. So that if you want women in employment, we want women in politics, we want women in a better economic status, unless we put a lot in improving the standards of education to our women. And also the 2/3 gender rule, that at the national level and the Senate level, it's not easy for us to reach. Although the affirmative action has actually assisted the Kenyan government a lot. If it were not of the affirmative action, if it were not for the 47 women reps to be elected into the National Assembly, today we will not have talked of Mishimboko, we will not have been talked of Asha Juma, Captain Rueda fighting for the MP seat in Lamu. It's because of the affirmative action that helps our women to join in the National Assembly through the women representation, of course, but But from that, it is when now they are financially, the financial status have improved. Also, they have been able to show the people, the constituents, that they can perform as well as men. They have been given that platform. So the affirmative action is assisting our women by giving the platform of showing that women can also do. So more has to be done, more have to be given to women for us to reach the status of men in employment, in politics, in business, everywhere. Thank you very much. That is all what I wanted to say, unless there is a question from the participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Amina Kale, for that presentation. And you are one of the role models of women in leadership, especially in Lamu. And there is a comment from somebody, I think Talhata from Lamu, yes, saying that wamama wahamasishwe kupigania nafasi. Lamu East hakuna hata moja alipigania, tukaachilia mbali kiti cha wanawake. Kwa sasa Madam Amina, tukubali kiongozi na utendakazi wako, hivyo wanawake wajiamini. So thank you very much, Honorable Amina, for that presentation. Alafu baada the last speaker, after Ms. Nyamai has made a presentation, we are going to have a question and answer session to all the panelists. Thank you very much. So I take this opportunity to invite Ms. Nyamai, who is a budget coordinator at the Coast Regional Budget Hub. She has a lot of experience on issues to do with budgeting, and we'd like her to also to touch on the issues of gender responsive budgeting in this current constitution, which we are celebrating 11 years since we promulgated it. What are some of the gains into gender responsive budgeting? And first of all, what is gender responsive budgeting? If she can break down that for us, can break it down, and probably she can give us recommendation on how we can get the most through the budget process, public participation, so that women can, and all the citizens of Kenya can get the most out of it. So welcome, Ms. Nyamai. Over to you, Ms. Nyamai.
Good morning, everyone. And
there's a lot of distraction. Miss Nani, please, if you're not speaking, please mute your microphone. Can the hosts please assist in muting the microphones? Can the host, Miss Nani? Hello. Please, if you're not speaking, please mute your microphone. Can the host please assist in muting the microphone? Mheshimiwa Amina. Okay, now there we go. Thank you very much. So, Ms. Nyamai, over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and I thank God for this opportunity and for everyone within this call. My name is Josephine Nyamai. I am a budget coordinator in the Coast Regional Hub, and I would like to take this opportunity to appreciate the speakers who came before me, Bwana Abubakar Zain, Madam Amina Kale, and Amina Sud. It's good to hear you laying the foundation of the gains where we are as far as the women empowerment and women policies implementation is concerned. So I have been asked to speak about specific thing about gender responsive budgeting, and I would like directly to go through that. And just before I go through that, Abubakar laid a very good background of where we were coming from as far as the Kenyan Constitution is concerned, which now we are celebrating 11 years since the inception of the Constitution. So when you read Article 27, Part 6 of our Constitution of Kenya, it is specifically states about the state and the legislating measures and policies which will guide affirmative actions and legislation and all that. And also when you read Article 56 of the Constitution, it states that the state shall put in place measures and affirmative actions to enable the communities, minority groups, and also marginalized groups to be able to, access opportunities in employment, access opportunities in development, access opportunities in, educational services, and also for them to be able to access, basic services such as health, education, and infrastructure. So maybe one thing that you may want to know is how do we then define affirmative action? According to the Constitution of Kenya 2010, Article 260, they define an affirmative action as a move that is undertaken by the state to be able to solve an inequity or an infringement of human rights based on the past events. And I think Bwana Zain put that in a very good perspective. Therefore, those are some of the existing legal provisions that we have as far as affirmative actions is concerned. And affirmative action has been around, the elderly people, the young people, the youth, the women, and also people living with disabilities. So when you read between Article 55 of the Constitution to around Article 57, then you will be able to find that kind of information. So I would say we have got so good policies in place. And one thing that we may want to understand is that all the policies that we have in place, they really require some good sort of financing for them, for such policies to be fully implemented. So when you look at the policies that we have, like the youth policies, the women policies, because when we talk about, we cannot talk about youth and you also fail to talk about women because they cut across. They are youth who are women, and it cuts across the sectors and all that. So one of the ways of the Constitution of Kenya has been able to advance this discussion and at least ensuring that there's a sort of, equitable development in the society. When you look at Article 74 of the Constitution, Part M, it speaks about creating, socioeconomic development for all the minority groups in the community. Therefore, here we are speaking about the young people, we are speaking about the women, we are speaking about people living with special abilities and other marginalized groups in the community. But one thing that we may want to ask ourselves, how has been the practice? Because here we are looking at two scenarios. We have what is stated in the law and what is the practice. For example, we have got several funds which have been created by the government at the national level and at the county level to enable women and young people to be able to access funding opportunities. And one of the most outstanding funds that we have is the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, which we call it GAF, and then we have Women Enterprise Fund, and then at the young people we have got several funds which the young people are able to access and then be able to undertake their programs and entrepreneurship and innovativeness. So all these are housed at the Ministry of Public Service, Gender, Youth and Sports. At the county level, some of these projects are being implemented by the Ministry of Youth, Gender, Sports and Cultural Affairs. So then this brings us to the very basis of this discussion, now the funding part of it. Have the government been able to implement these policies and fund these policies accordingly? You and I will be able to agree that the aspect of finances have been limited, and therefore how we use them then now becomes a very big question as far as the implementation of policies is concerned. So when I'm speaking about budgets, they impact our lives in each and every aspect of our lives. Look at the policies that we have in place. Look at Vision 2030. Look at the Sustainable Development Goals. Look at the medium-term plan, such as the Big Four agenda that the government has been implementing. All these policies and the blueprint policies and affirmative action, they require some substantive bit of funding from the government. So the big question that you want to understand today, does the government's budgets being able to fund these policies accordingly. And now this one takes us to our next discussion, which is about gender responsive budgeting. And when we are speaking about gender responsive budgeting, I think one of the most wins of this constitution is the fact that it gave the citizen the power to be able to participate and influence the decisions which affect them from day-to-day life. And those decisions, could be policy decisions. And budget making process is one of those policy tools that the citizens, whether women, whether men, whether youth, whether young or old, can be able to use and influence the decisions that the government is making in terms of raising resources, using the resources, and for them to be able to provide them with effective services such as water, health, sanitation, and clean environment, and water, basically, realization of human rights as envisioned in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. So when we talk about gender responsive budgeting, this is a subject that I know we've heard about equality, but now I want to introduce another term that we call equity. When we're talking about equality, you are trying to treat the parties equally, yeah? And I'll use the example of, I know Jafar is in this meeting. If I want to treat Jafar and I want to treat, Madam Kale the same way, yeah? When it comes to maybe opportunities, when it comes to resources, when it comes to access of those resources and all that. But when you're talking about equity, we are talking about being able to treat people, doesn't matter the race, doesn't matter the gender, doesn't matter where they come from, based on their needs. And that is the principle of equity is well outlined, in the Chapter 12 of the Constitution, which speaks a lot on public finance management in Kenya and the other legislation. So gender responsive budgeting is basically trying to integrate the needs of men, the needs of women, the needs of young boys, the needs of young girls, in all the stages of the budgeting. And as we know that in our budgeting calendar, we have got 4 stages whereby we are able to integrate those needs. So here, gender responsive budgeting then would mean the government, whether at the county level or at the national level, being able to integrate the needs of men, the needs and the priorities of men and women from the very first stage, which is implementation, to the second stage, which is budget approval, to the third stage, which is budget implementation, and to the final stage, which is budget audit and evaluation. So when you're talking about integration of these needs, we know that men and women, they have got needs. And even when you go to public participation, you'll bear witness with me, the priorities or the needs that women will be most likely presenting before the government, they'll mostly be talking about water and maybe health, but men may be, skewed towards things like infrastructure, environment and such related things. So at the end of the day, in order to ensure that we are not biased on one gender, and we have balanced and equitable development throughout the society, then we have to be able to know the needs of men, the needs of women, and then address those needs accordingly by integrating the priorities in the budgeting, planning documents, such as the county integrated development plan at the county level, and also the annual development plan and the county physical and strategy paper. So when we talk about gender responsive budgeting, we are not advocating for a separate budget for men or separate budgets for the women. We want the society to be balanced in terms of development. And the key word here is the needs and the priorities. We know that women have got separate needs. We know that men have got also different needs. And maybe at the end of the day, if you want to treat them equally, you may not address the needs of the two genders accordingly. Therefore, it is very, very important when we are budgeting to be able to ensure that throughout the budget, the priorities that we settle for, we are able to integrate the needs of the male, female, boys, girls, and ensure there's equitable and balanced development. So that is as far as the gender responsive budgeting is concerned. Now, that is the principle of gender responsive budgeting, trying to look at our budgeting process at the county and the national level. Can we say that the government has been able to address the aspect of gender responsiveness in their budgeting? Can we see from implementation, from formulation, from approval to implementation, and even to the time we are trying to evaluate the budget, can we be able say that the government has been able to mainstream gender in all the aspects of the planning and even in the priority identification? I think this is a subject that we may want to discuss a lot, because from the analysis that we have been able to do, you find that there is still a disconnect as far as the integration of needs of men and women is concerned in terms of balanced development. For example, I would just give you a very simple simple illustration. Let's look at water, access to water. The Constitution of Kenya in Article 43 speaks about access to clean water and also high standards of sanitation. So when you look at the KNBS statistics for 2020, you'll find that there are those households which are headed by women, and there are those households which are headed by men. And at the end of the day, when you look at the disparities in terms of access to water, despite the area where they're coming from, you may find that in some areas, the needs, the burden for the men who are not able to access clean drinking water, it weighs higher than those of women, and vice versa. Therefore, yeah, the discussion is not to have specific budget for women and or separate budget for the men, but the idea here is to be able to know the needs of the two populations. And one of the things that we have been advocating as far as gender responsive is budgeting is to look at the tools of gender responsive budgeting. And one of the tools is the gender appraisal, such that you will be able to interview the beneficiaries of those services and tell whether or not they are benefiting from the services which they are supposed to be benefiting. And another one is trying to have gender disintegrated, appraisals. You are able to, so that you can be able to tell whether or not the people who are supposed to benefit from a particular service, whether they are able to benefit or not, and what are the challenges. But you find that mostly, and this is sadly to say, that in our budgeting process, the aspects of gender responsive, I can see to some extent is blind. And as much as it has been, realized in some departments and in some areas, I think it is something that we still need to do more as far as integrating the needs of men and women conclusively without being biased is concerned. So that is basically it, and I would want to welcome any questions. And before I go to the questions, I would also want to state something that Amina Kale said as far as the access to information is concerned. Even trying to look at the beneficiaries of the existing funds, such as the Women Enterprise Fund, National Government Affirmative Action Fund, and even the youth funds that exist, you find that the information comes in block, and therefore you cannot tell how many women, maybe of this age, were able to benefit. And if you are referring to the youths, you cannot be able to tell how many men, how many boys and girls, or how many women and females were able to benefit from the data that is given. Therefore, the issue of data becomes a very big challenge, and access to information. And therefore, this is maybe one of the recommendations that we may want to have, is that the government needs to integrate and mainstream the aspect of gender in all the processes of the budgeting, because budgeting is one of the biggest policy tools that we have to be able to influence the services that we receive from the government. And maybe number two recommendation is that there is need to have access to information, which is not only available, but that information being comprehensive. For example, when we look at the county implementation reports, are we able to tell the number of women disintegrated by their age, age gap and all that? Are we able to tell the number of women who benefited from a particular service or from a particular fund that is being implemented by the government? When we look at the implementation reports, can we tell the number of young people, whether female and males, who were able to benefit from a service that is offered by the county or even the national government? So these are some of the issues that the government needs to put in place and ensure that they leverage the use of data and give as many details as possible. In another language, we call such information non-financial information. So at the end of the day, we need to see a bit of matching of the priorities and the projects which are being implemented, matching with the finances which are attached to some programs, and also how the details of such information are being given to the public members. So thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nyamai, for that insightful presentation. We have learned a lot, but personally, I thought equity should prevail, not equality. But today I've understand that we should have both the needs of men and women taken care of in our budget. So right now, I would like to invite any questions that the participants have, and I'll start with those that are in the chat section. There is a comment from Afi Swale. What Madam Amina said is true. Fear to compete is also a challenge, and our culture that discriminates the girl child. And then there is Talhata. His question goes like, swali kwa Madam Amina, kama yeye amekuwa kwa bunge mara mbili, anaona ni mbinu gani itumike kushawishi kina mama kujitokeza kupigania viti hivyo na kuondoa utamaduni? So probably we'll start with that, directly going to Madam Amina, and the other panelists can also contribute to the same. So Honorable Amina Kale, I think the question is addressed to you, and the other panelists can feel free to ask to respond to the same. Honorable Amina. So as you wait for Honorable Amina, probably Madam Amina Sud, you can assist in answering that question. Okay. How can women be encouraged to get into elective positions, despite the cultural challenges that we have, especially in the coast region?
Sauti iko chini sana Bwana James.
Oh, so you come. You kama wanipata kwa sasa?
Bado iko chini, ukiweza kuongeza zaidi itatusaidia.
Okay, nasema swali na kwamba je, kina mama wanaweza kusaidika vipi kuwania viti vya kisiasa, japokuwa tuko na challenge ya hiyo mila ama desturi ambazo zinakandamiza kina mama kuchukua nafasi za uongozi?
Mwanzo amesema vipi? Kindly just repeat.
Swali amesema inatoka kwa Talha, amesema ni mbinu gani ambayo inaweza kutumika ili kushawishi kina mama kujitokeza kupigania viti na kuondoa zile tamaduni ambazo ziko.
Okay, kushawishi kina mama. Okay, naweza kujibu kabisa au?
Ndio, endelea.
Asante sana dada Talha kwa swali lako. Mimi naweza kukwambia hili swali ni gumu na haliwezi kujibika haraka hivyo. Kwa sababu hizi culture zetu zimemea mizizi kwetu. Kuweza kumshawishi mwanamke wa Kiswahili mwanzo aweze kusimama yeye mwenyewe kabla ya kufikiria society huwa ni ngumu, lakini tumejaribu kutumia CBOs, FBOs kuwaeleza kuwa kidini haikukatazwa. Tumewaeleza kwa kidini na pia tumewaeleza kwa kutumia mila, kwa kutumia hizo CBOs mila, lakini zaidi ni upande wa dini. Kwa zile area ambao za affectiwa na mambo ya dini, ni lazima mashehe wetu watueleze kwa kinaga ubwaga kuwa dini haikutukataza wanawake kutawali. Labda kutawali kuwa amiril muminina, hapo ni ngumu, lakini hizi mambo madogo madogo, manake hata wakati wa Saidna Umar aliwapa wanawake fulani vyeo paka kusimamia masoko, kusimamia mambo. Kwa hivyo yaonekana wanawake hawakukatazwa kuwa wakubwa, lakini sasa paka kupatikane mashehe wale wanaosikizwa waweze kuzungumza na kwenye vikundi vya wamama, kuwatoa uoga kuwa waweza kusimama. Na upande mwingine si kushawishi tu kuwatoa kwenye culture, pia na hii financial status. Wanawake hata ulimwengu mzima wanaomiliki ardhi ni 5% na wanaokuwa elected ni 5% mara nyingi. Kwa hivyo yaonekana financially wakiweza kuwa supported kama Madam Amina Kali alivyosema, ikiwa tutaweza kuwa finance hawa wamama wakisimama, kwa kuna percentage fulani kwa kila area iwekwe, kama ni serikali itawasupport, kama ni CBOs, kama ni watu aina hiyo iwasupport kina mama waweze kusimama kwa upande wa kifinance, wataweza kusimamia mambo mingi sana, kwa sababu wanawake ni mahodari katika sisemi kwa sababu mimi leo ni mwanamke pia, lakini tumeona mara nyingi wakipewa nafasi za ku-lead huwa wafanya vizuri sana, kwa sababu wanawake mara nyingi ni trust, na uoga pia wa kufanya makosa, hataki kuambiwa yeye amefanya makosa ataibika. Kwa hivyo mara nyingi huwa yuko careful kweli kutokosea. Kwa hivyo tukiweza kuwapa wamama nafasi zaidi, tutajenga nchi yetu zaidi. Kwa hivyo nafasi ya kuweza kuwashawishi kina mama kutoka kwenye culture zao, ni tupate wanaohusika haswa, wanaotufanya kutugandamiza, waweze sasa kuja na opposite story, watueleze ukweli, labda itasaidia. Shukran.
Asante sana Madam Amina for that insight. Probably Mr. Abubakar Zain, how can you, what's your contribution, what's your take on that? How can we encourage other women to take up leadership and elective positions which are under the Constitution of Kenya?
Over and above what my sister said, I think we also need to reform and change the architecture of politics in Kenya. One of the organizing principles, which is very negative, which is not supported by the Constitution or the law, is the use of violence in elections. Now, if you do not address the issue of the use of violence, you will get very few women who would want to participate in a violent process. And then the other attendant organizing principles of elections, including Kenyans organizing based on corruption, based on leveraging of ethnic identity. So the negative aspects of political processes in Kenya have the ability of keeping women away from the political process. Also to address the issue of the use of financing. And you realize that we have a big challenge in implementing the law governing the financing of elections. And the politicians who are in parliament currently will not want to pass the regulations that are necessary proposed by IEBC in enforcing the limits for how much one can spend. So when you make elections very expensive, and that we know that women have been disadvantaged by history, then you're also putting extra barriers in terms of those who would want to participate in electoral processes.
Okay, thank you.
I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Abubakar. Over to Ms. Nyamayo. How can we encourage women to take up elective positions?
Thank you, James, and also thank you, Abubakar and Amina Kali. So I think that has been said, but for me, I think it is an aspect of empowerment, empowering the women to be able to be in position to take up those positions, because especially in the coastal region, the issue of culture has really taken shape, and therefore that really hinders many women from participating in electoral processes, not only voting, but also for them being elected and also their representation. So for me, it is about building the capacity of the women to be able to take up those positions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And there is a question from one Hindu who said, asked, how can a CBO then apply to such projects? Probably Hindu, you can unmute and ask the question so that it can be a bit clear.
Okay, salam alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Yes, Hindu.
Zungumza Hindu.
Okay, I thought she was answering already. There was no need for me to speak again. How can a CBO then apply for such projects? I've had two of the speakers talking about projects and projects that benefit the youth-led women organization. So my question is, how do you guys advertise, or where do you advertise? Because personally, we have a lot of youth-led, female youth-led organization, but we really don't know where the projects are. We've tried, is there a specific maybe site or a place where these projects can be seen? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hindu, for that question. And I think Ms. Nyamai can be able to, can go ahead and be the first one to respond to that question.
Thank you, Andrew, for your good question. And I think I want to understand that maybe the projects that you're requesting are the one that I talked about being offered by the government. So you're asking, how can CBOs, community-based organizations, be able to apply for such funds? So one, okay, it is not published by us, it is published by the government. Let me make that one clear first. So about you being able to access the youth funds, you can do so as an individual or as an organized group or as a group of organized people. Then all you need to do, you may want to visit the youth department in your county. Also, I want to believe that at the national level, there's a ward, representative and even county. I mean, they are called the sub-county what? The sub-county admins and the sub-county administrators and the village administrators. Those forms are usually available in their offices. If that is not, if you cannot get them there, then you can go to the nearest Huduma Center and ask for the forms, and then you can be able to apply. Alternatively, you can go to the Youth Enterprise Fund websites, or whichever fund that you may want to refer to, could be the women one. Then get the form there, download, fill as a group, and then you take it back to the respective department. So if you're in Lamu, you may want to begin with the Lamu Department of Youth, Sports and Gender and Cultural Affairs. Then they can give you more information on how you can be able maybe to benefit from such funds. Thank you.
Is it 11:30?
James, over to you.
Voter educators and probably voter educators.
No, hello.
Hello, Madam Amina. I was asking, how can the CBOs which are present in this call, how can they apply to get accreditation to be voter educators and voter observers in the IBC?
I think, James, you can answer that easily, right? They can apply through our website. There's a form there. You download it and fill it and send the documents that are needed to IBC, and I'm sure we'll do that promptly.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Madam.
Hindu, for the question.
Thank you, madam. You know, if the expert is in the house, you just let the expert.
I've allowed you. Kindly answer it.
Thank you, madam. So from the participants, if there's any other person who has a question, they can unmute and ask the question directly. Kama kuna mtu ako na swali, anaweza ku-unmute na kuuliza swali lake. So as you wait for other questions, and we are about to wind up the call probably in the next 5 minutes.
James. Hello. James.
Hello, just ask the question.
It's through public participation. But if you attend the public participation forums, you find out the turnout of citizens is very low, especially women do not attend such forums. What can we do to encourage more women to attend public participation forums so that they can be able to make decisions concerning budgets, decisions concerning the projects that the government wants to implement in their area, and they can also make contributions towards policies that are being formulated. So,
okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Samara.
Sorry, you keep on breaking, but let me just pick up the question. So how do we ensure that there's more participation by the women? Whoever asked that question, that is the true, that is the true situation at the ground. From time to time, the few public participation that I've attended, you'll find that they are male dominated, and I'm speaking in the context of the coast. Because that is where I work, that is where I was born and grew up. So you find that when you go, how the public participation forums are structured, they are majorly dominated by the men. But the question is, how then can we ensure that women participate? First, I think it is a question of, it is a bit of interest from the women and also them taking responsibility. Because one of the things that we have observed is that challenge to public participation is the unwillingness and and reluctance. They've been reluctant to participate in governance processes, not only budget. And mostly one of the factors that maybe motivates many people to participate is the aspect of, I would say it is incentive driven, whereby when someone maybe attends a meeting, they would expect by the time the count is done, they are going to get their 500 shillings for transport and go back home. But you also know that in most of the public participation programs, they do not have budget for, to facilitate the communities, even though it is a requirement by the law that the county, when you look at function number 14 of the county, and also the County Government Act of 2012, they should provide mechanism to facilitate public participation. Therefore, you find that there's that mentality from the community members, not only women, but also the other segments of the community, not to want to participate in the governance processes. So I think here is a two-way solution, whereby the women and also the young people, they show the zeal and want to participate in those processes. And then at the same time, the government has also a role to play to ensure that there's effective public participation. And how do they do that? Because public participation is all about consulting, collaborating and informing the people who are affected by a decision to be able to influence that decision effectively. Therefore, it is the role of the government, whether at the county level or even at the national level, to be able to provide information on a timely basis, to communicate the venue where is the meeting taking place, to also be able to give the required information, if it is a budget information. Like, for example, right now, people are deliberating about the annual development plan for the next financial year. The government has a role to ensure that they give the citizen the information so that they can interact with the information, and from the information, they are able to draw and identify their priority areas and then present during public participation. Therefore, I think here it is a two-way traffic, whereby the community has to take up the responsibility of participating in the decision, and also the government providing an ample environment for participating in such decisions. Therefore, it is a two-way traffic. But one of the challenges is the access to information. Sometimes, yes, people will be willing to go to participate, but then you find they do not have that information, and you know it is not so easy to engage with what you don't know. Therefore, I think there's a gap, but you have been trying to push that through budget transparency to ensure that the government avail the information in good time. And therefore, when they avail the information, we work with a group of community people whom we call the budget champions. We sit together, analyze with them, assist the community members to be able to discuss their priorities and present the same before the government. Therefore, one of the solutions that we can give is that the women in the coastal counties can just join the group of women champions and get such information and engage with their government effectively and qualitatively. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nani, for taking that question. Mbwana Mohammed had a question. Can Mbwana please unmute your microphone and ask your question directly? Mbwana.
James, sikusikii chochote.
Okay, kuna swali kutoka kwa Mbwana. Naomba kama Mbwana angeweza ku unmute aweze kuuliza swali lake moja kwa moja. Bwana Mbwana.
Habari zenu?
Nzuri.
Nasema kuna hii 30% ya hii inatoka kwa serikali ya county. Sasa tunauliza lazima wana apply tu as a youth group or PWDs group kina mama, ama lazima wakuwe na company? Because kufungua company huku kwetu nako imekuwa ni challenge sana, ni shida sana kwa hizi group. So naomba kunifafanulia hapo.
Okay, asante sana Mbwana kwa swali lako. Probably the panelists wanaweza kulichukua swali hilo. Najua Ms. Nyamae amekuwa na hiyo experience ya kuinteract na vikundi ambavyo vina apply hizo tender. Probably Ms. Nyamae, can you respond to that question, please?
Thank you, Mbwana, for your question. It's a good question. So you're asking whether people apply as a group, a registered company, or as an individual. So just speaking from experience, especially in Mombasa, I think the county emphasizes on people going as a group of individuals, whether and it is called the AGPO, access to government procurement opportunities, and it says that at least 30% of the procurement opportunities shall be awarded to men and women. Therefore, you go as a group. You can go to Duma Center, or you go to the youth department, and then you go as a team, like 10 people. And the reason as to why they have been encouraging a registered group is that the experience in the financial year 2014, 2016 is that the people who benefited from the revolving fund, they were unable to, they went as a team, and then they divided the money, and then everyone went their way. And therefore, they were unable to undertake the project which they were supposed to undertake, to be able to return the money so that another group can be able to benefit. Therefore, I think you may want to visit the AGPO website for more information, especially for the opportunities at the national level, and then you can get more insights on how you want to go about it. If you want to do so at the county level, you can as well visit the youth department to be able to get such information. Thank you. I hope I answered your question conclusively.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nyamawe. Na pia Bwana Mbwana, unaweza kuvisit hiyo website www.agpo.go.ke for more information on the same. Right now it's 11:38 and we are supposed to end this meeting at 11:30. So I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of Muslim Women Advancement of Rights and Protection to thank Yes, Bwana Talhata.
Sorry, nikatishe kidogo.
Okay.
Naona muda umeenda lakini sorry kwa 1 minute tu. Ni kama mwapo. Hizo funds zote ambazo zimetajwa, youth fund, uwezo fund, ukula mwisema.
Bwana Talhata unapotea. Bwana Talhata, naam.
Naam.
Naam, swali lako kurudia. Naam.
Na kwambia hivi, hizo youth fund, uwezo fund huku Lamu East ama tuweza tukasema Faza Ward bado hazijawahi kutokea kabisa. Sisi dependents mpaka dakika hii hatujawahi kusikia hizo kitu. Afadhali women enterprise wa zaja, lakini hizo zingine hakuna kabisa. So kama mwapo mweza tusaidia vipi na hizo fund ziwe zitakuja huko?
Asante sana Bwana Talhata, nafikiri uko Lamu County Faza.
Usituelekeze kwa county, lakini usituelekeze kwa ofisi yote, tutataka nyinyi mtusaidie kwa sababu hizo ofisi tumechoka nazo huko.
Asante sana Bwana Talhata kwa swali lako na kontani yako. Nafikiri yuko ofisa wetu wa MWAP ambaye pia ndio chairman wa MWAP, yuko Lamu County, Bwana Jafar. Nafikiri inaweza kukusaidia na namba yake, na ukimcontact yeye mtaweza kukutana na mkazungumza na mkapata suluhu katika jambo hilo.
Tutashukuru.
Asante sana. Yuko Bwana Jafar na Bwana Talhata, niko na namba yako, nitakupigia baada ya hii call ili nikupatie namba ya ofisa wetu wa MWAP katika county ya Lamu. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the speakers, all the guests, the panelists ambao wameweza kuchukua for taking their time to join this call. Bwana Abubakar Zain, we really appreciate you taking your time to be with us. Madam Amina Sood, Ms. Nyamawe, and Honorable Amina Kale. Thank you very much for sharing your insights as we celebrate 11 years into the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya and the opportunities that are there. Thank you very much. And to all the participants, thank you for taking your time to join this call. And for more of such information on upcoming calls, you can visit our Facebook page, Muslim Women Advancement of Rights and Protection, whereby we normally advertise for such calls. So thank you very much and God bless us all. Asanteni sana.
Hata nyinyi asanteni sana. Karibuni.
Thank you, madam. Asanteni.
Asanteni sana. It was very educative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sawa, Madam Afie.